Hey everybody, welcome back to Nina Home and More. If you're new, welcome. My name is Nina and I'm a stay-at-home mom of 3. And tonight we're going to be doing a silent stream. So there will be no talking or noise. However, when the editing's done, it takes, I think, like 24 hours, almost, let's say 16 hours for the finished processing in the YouTube studio. Then I'll add the music. But until then, there's going to be like dead silence. However, we're going to get to cleaning. So tonight I'm just going to let you guys know really quickly. I'm going to be washing the rest of the dishes, wiping down the countertops, sweeping the floor, washing the floor as well. And then we're going to be cooking some chicken and some bitter melon. So that's what you'll be seeing me do around the kitchen. I'm going to try to do that all within an hour. So let's get into it. Thank you for that. Hi, Just Jackie. How are you? Thank you for stopping by the live stream. Yeah, we're having bitter melon tonight. If it's burnt, soak it with baking soda. Yeah, I soaked it last night in the vinegar and baking soda, but I didn't put that much vinegar and baking soda in the water. So at this point, I was just trying to like scrub off the rest. One side came off kind of easy, and it's just like a little bit in the corners. I was trying to scrape off with the spoon, and I'm trying to get off with the baking soda and vinegar again. Maybe a little elbow grease will get it off, because I don't want it to be soaking in there no more. Because it'd be day 2 and probably day 3, day 4, day 5. So I'm trying to just like get rid of it. It's just a little couple of spots, but thank you so much for that. I'm gonna put it back on mute because I have the Real Housewives on. She's pretty red. How are you? How are you doing today? Thank you for stopping by the live stream. It's a silent stream, so I was over there cutting the bitter melon. I tried to zoom in a little bit. But yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Now I'm gonna put some salt on the bitter melon to take out some of the bitterness. And I'm gonna let that sit and I'm gonna get started on that chicken. Let's go.
I don't put filters on my YouTube videos. Some people do, but like, you know, things like that. So I cut out the shots where I don't look as good in, or I have maybe like the worst double chin in, or whatever. So yeah, podcasting. I'm excited for this podcast in particular because I feel like I'm going to give you the tea on how I got to where I am now in life and in specifically my career. Because I feel like I've never really done a deep dive. Fun fact, actually it's epic. No, I'm just kidding. But I feel like I really give tea on like my life and tips and tricks on how I got to where I am now on other people's podcasts. I try and say yes to like every podcast someone asks me on to, because like there was one point in my life where I had no followers and I was trying to get like any guests on my podcast, and so I empathize with those trying to like kickstart their career. So I try and say yes to everything, and I try and actually give like good tips and tricks and tea so that it's like a good episode for them. And so I feel like I spill the tea on other people's podcasts, and I'm like, what the heck? I'm giving all these good tips and tricks, and it's not on my own. So this is the moment I'm going to dive in, really give you a background on how I was raised, why I am the way I am, how I ended up in this career and job, and all the things. So let's get started. We're going to kickstart it with a segment that's going to be recurring on making moves, and it's going to be my motherboarding juicy polls, and we're going to call it maybe like the polls of the day. Maybe I'll find a fun song to put like under that, and we can like really make it a segment. If I refer to you guys, if I refer to my amazing producer, Amelia, shout out. She does my job. This is like so weird me being in front of the camera. But if I refer to her, that's who she is, my producer. And yeah, so maybe we'll come up with a fun little like song or shindig, or let me know if you have like a little jingle we could put there. If someone wants to send in them singing, that would be fun to put in. So we're gonna do polls just to kickstart it, and then we're gonna get into the juice, the tea, the drama, honey. Okay. First poll. By the way, if you don't follow me on Instagram, what the heck are you doing? Follow me on Instagram. It's at TK's Juicy Polls. I try and post at least a few poll questions a day. It's basically like I try and do juicy ones that make you think. It's kind of like a fun game to play during your day, like when you're bored at work. If Instagram's working, it wasn't working yesterday, and I feel like all hell broke loose in my world. Craig, you're gonna influence our friends, guys. Okay, so first poll of the day is happiness a state of mind or a temporary emotion? I love this question. Someone sent it in, and it made me think, which those are my favorite type of poll questions, but ultimately I voted state of mind. And I'll tell you why. I think that with me and the way that I was raised, you, of course, like you feel like sad sometimes, and I feel like those things come and go, same with happiness, but I think your mind is so powerful that you can really convince yourself. I don't know, I feel like someone's gonna come for me right now and be like, well, I have like a actual diagnosed thing, blah, 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 which I understand. I'm just telling you from my point of view. And like what I voted. Anyway, I think it's state of mind because I just think there's so many times where my mind's so powerful, I can like spiral and get anxious and go down this like horrible path, and I truly sometimes have the power to like chuck myself out of that or hype myself up or whatever the case is. And I try to choose to live my life in a happy state of mind. So one of my favorite quotes my dad taught me and like instilled into me when I was little was, if you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you're dare not, you don't. If you like to win but don't think you can, it's almost a cinch you won't. And then the next verse is like, if you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out in this world will find success begins with the fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. And I think that's so true all the time. So like my boss, my friends, family, always like, if you think you're beaten, you are. And I think that's really true. Like, it's all in the state of mind, you know? So therefore, I voted yes. Happiness is a state of mind. 59% of so temporary emotion. Next one. Let's get into it. Do you think people have multiple soulmates? I voted yes. What do you guys think? DM me about it. I think yes, because I think in my head, like a soulmate doesn't have to be like a lover or someone you have like sexual relations with. Like a soulmate is truly like someone who like you relate to and are in a relationship with your soul, like you like vibe with in a different way. And I feel like I have soulmates that are like girlfriends, gal pals, like people that I've met in like my career or like I grew up with or whatever. And like I have different soulmates for different reasons. Like I'm specifically thinking of one of my friends who lives in Nashville, and like honestly, I feel like I don't know. Like I met her on the internet, and I don't know her that well, but like something with us, like we just clicked, and I feel like she's like one of my soulmates. But then again, I hope I have like a future lover who's a soulmate too. Does that make any sense? I don't know. You guys, I was 90 or 84% of you voted yes, multiple soulmates. So I guess you guys agree with me. Next one. If you're on a girl's private story, are you friend zoned? This is one that my guy friend requested, and I posted it on my story. I thought this was so interesting. First thing that's interesting about this is that guys think about this shit all the time. They're like, and I am here to tell you, if your girl listening to this and you're like, oh my god, girls are crazy, we're talking about blah blah blah, about boys, and like, you know, if you liked my story or if you viewed my story or if you liked my picture, or I feel like girls are known for overanalyzing that and like we're seen as crazy for doing so. But I'm here to tell you, guys do that too. My brother and his friends, they are like doing in everything you're basically insecure about, they pay attention to. Which I'm sad to tell you, but it's true. It also makes you feel less crazy because you're like, okay, they're overanalyzing do, they're overanalyzing what they view, who they're adding to their close friends, private story, yada yada. So this question was, if you're on a girl's private story, are you friend zoned? This is from a guy's perspective. I personally think no, because I feel like I more so, like I change my close friends all the time depending on what I post. But I feel like I put my crushes on my close friends. Now, I am in a different position because influencer people, this is key, use their close friends to see like if their crush is even watching their story, because sometimes we can't even see because we have so many people following us. I know it's so cringe. But like seriously, like normal people can look and they're like, okay, you know, I can look through like the 500 people that view my story, like it's pretty easy to see if like John Doe viewed it. But if you're someone that you have like thousands and hundreds of thousands of people voting or looking at your story, it's hard to see if homeboy or like the guy you just went on a date with or like your wedding crush or whatever saw your story. So we use that. I use at least close friends to see if my watch my story. Not me overanalyzing that. But yeah, I would say definitely no. I think if anything, you're less friend zoned if you're on the private story. I mean, unless the girl is like ripping like knocking selfies and like has her fixing on, like doesn't give a shit, like you're getting that vibe. It's like friend zone energy, but at least from my perspective, I think you're not in friend zone. And actually 81%.
Don't let me in. I know he found your ass.
Agree. It says no, that does not mean
I'm coming out in 1 minute, okay?
Okay, next one. Do you think, oh, you're here. Okay, would you rather date into royalty or a billionaire? I'm definitely going billionaire. You know what's funny though, and ironic, is that my last name is King. I think that would be kind of iconic. But I think, like, who wouldn't want to date a Billy? Like, I don't care if you're like royalty. A billionaire is like, and more attractive to me. People agree with me. 70%.
Hold on, baby, I'm coming.
73% said they'd rather date a billionaire. Okay. Should you listen to your friend if have a bad feeling about a guy? This one by yes. I would agree, although there is, I mean,
Hold on, I'm coming.
at the end of the day, if you're not,
I'm coming.
if you're full about your friend's opinion, like, are you But that's the
I literally just knocked over the tripod with the Bissell spinwave. Sorry. Oops. Let me get the bread off the. Hey, can you turn that off?
For your own. And for yourself. Which is awesome because I feel like I grew up fast and
It just turned off.
I was doing 100 miles per hour growing up and becoming an adult and figuring it the fork out because I had no idea what I was doing. But it kind of sucks because like I look back at my
Hey, Cleaning Life. Hi, how are you? Thank you for stopping by. Welcome to a live stream.
Not fully.
I just literally knocked over the tripod.
Most kids go to college.
I was trying to clean up this orange spill here.
They're in an apartment with like
I'm gonna give it another go.
And then they go to the big apartment that they have to pay for and blah blah blah. I went straight to the big apartment, so that was a little bit hard. It's also expensive AF. never gonna have the perfect body before you go on a date or whatever. These are, by the way, these are things that I have done. I've called myself back from. I was like, you know what? Once I do lose this amount of weight, and once I look this perfect, and once I have achieved these things in my career, and once I have the perfect profile picture, and once my whole brand is established, and once I have this many followers on Instagram, then I'll start a YouTube channel because people will take me seriously. Nope, not true. Not working true. All that's bullshit. You need to launch now and just do it. Bite the bullet. It's gonna be hard. It's never gonna be easy. It's gonna be actually really working hard. Harder than you probably think it's going to be. It's going to crash and burn in your face. You're gonna want to move home. You have to have friends and family in your corner that are like, no, you wanted to do this, you've worked, you got it. If my parents wouldn't have been like, no, you better stay there, this is what you wanted. If they wouldn't have done that, I would have moved home and transferred to Butler and tried to go to the same school as my ex-boyfriend. Dead ass.
Okay.
I would have done that. I would have never been to where I am now. I would have been miserable, literally. Get people in your corner that trust your vision and believe in you, and they're gonna motivate you when you want to come back because it's easier to come back, but it's not better. Just because it's easier doesn't mean it's better. So launch now, adjust later. This is your sign. I didn't mean to go all Gary Vee on you. I wish I could tell my younger self. People were like, what would you tell your younger self when you started? I'm like, launch now, adjust later. Freaking start the YouTube channel. Start the podcast.
Sorry guys. This is what the dinner, is it hot? Oh, I can handle it. And then that's the bread.
Dad said how long you're going to. She said she's done now.
Alright. And I'm just gonna close out the live stream now. Sorry, it's a different angle. Thank you guys so much for watching. We got the kitchen done. The kitchen is done. Alright. The floor is done. And it's a 2-hour long live stream, but we got it done. We cooked the dinner, we cleaned the countertops, we cleaned the floor, we washed the floor, we washed the dishes. So everything is done. Now it's time to eat dinner and go to bed. So I'll see you guys tomorrow on the next live stream. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this motivates you to keep doing your housework too. Cooking, cleaning, washing, and all that fun stuff, taking care of the babies, multitasking, whatever you need to do to keep the system running. I really hope that this inspires you. And then when you get your chance to take the time to just woosah. I can really relax now tonight knowing that the majority of my stuff is done today. I've done a lot of housework today. We got our school done, accomplished. So I'm excited to share all of this with you. The kitchen part, and I hope that it does motivate you. I do these every night in hopes that it motivates someone. So I hope that someone is watching and feels motivated. And if you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up. And I'll see you guys tomorrow to do it all over again. Thank you guys so much for watching. I don't know why I just did that. Love you guys. Bye.